Welcome to Standard Intelligence, your resource for competitive constructive magic in the UK. This is episode 70 for the week beginning the 18th of March 2019. I'm Dr. Jack Patton.
And I'm Simeon Beaver. This episode is brought to you in part thanks to our supporters on our Patreon. Many thanks to those of you who have made a contribution. It is immensely appreciated by both of us. Anyone who is our supporter on Patreon by the 2nd of April will be eligible for our April draw. If you'd like to learn more about how to support us, please head over to patreon.com/SIcast. We're also sponsored by the largest tournament organisers in the UK, Axion Now. Axion Now have run some of the best events in the UK, from FNMs and PPTQs to Nationals, and they're now legendary mega modern events. So we are very happy to have them on board as our sponsors.
Exactly, Simeon. And apart from being at the centre of a community of Magic players of all skill levels, they also sell singles, sealed product, and all the equipment you could need to play tabletop Magic. Head over to axionnow.com to find out more.
And with that, let's get right into the news for Magic this week. So the deck lists for the Challenger decks, for this season's Challenger decks, were released this week. They're reasonably strong decks. I mean, obviously, we know they're not going to be the perfect 75s that people won tournaments with, because there needs to be some method of you being able to improve your deck with the cards you buy, and B, they won't put all the mythics in, for instance. So there'll often be 2 ofs instead of 4 ofs and things like that. How are you feeling about them, Jack?
I'm pretty positive. I will say that. I think they are pretty good representations of decks that you will see in tournaments. In fact, the only one that I'm like, would you really see that very often anymore, is the Deadly Discovery, which is the Golgari list. And obviously, most of what was Golgari is now Sultai. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with them. The white deck is an interesting build in that it seems to be pretty life gain.
Yeah, it's the Louis Scott Vargas build from the last season's Pro Tour.
Yeah,
with the life gain aspect. I can see why they've gone for it, where they've talked about it sort of it's self-sustaining, it didn't involve anything else. But essentially it was not played after Louis Scott Vargas won. That isn't the white deck that took off.
No, exactly.
It was the other white deck that took off.
Yeah. And then obviously mono red is seeing some play, but not a massive amount of it.
The mono red, I feel, is the one that I go, yeah, okay. It would still be perfectly reasonable to play an experimental frenzy version of the red deck. Okay, it's got a Banefire in it, which it so doesn't need in the main deck. Why couldn't you just have 3 experimental frenzies and no Banefires? But that's, although mono red has fallen off the planet, if people are playing it, they're playing most of those creatures still.
Yep. What actually surprised me was, 4 Runaway Steamkin, 4 Chain Whirler, and a Rekindling Phoenix. It's like, no, this is the creature base, and apart from the fact that we're missing the new light up the stage and skewer the critics.
It was surely blatantly obvious that those 2 were going to be into this red deck. Could they?
Simeon, have you not noticed that there's just no cards from the most recent print?
No, I know there's no cards, because the reasoning that in the article is that because of the guild structure of the sets, that they couldn't see, and the timing of when this had to be ready by, they couldn't completely predict what from the new set would make it into these decks.
Yep. Yeah.
But Light Up the Stage is
I think
strong. It just has to be in this deck.
I think the problem is, as soon as you put Light Up the Stage in, everyone just sort of goes, why not this card? Why not that card? Surely it's obvious. And it's like, yes, but that's not what we're working with. What we're working with is...
Last time they had cards from that season's sets in, didn't they?
I don't think they did. I'm looking at the lists now.
Is it just more obvious because of the guild structure?
I think so.
That there aren't cards from the current set. Maybe there weren't. Or maybe wherever on earth we're on, Ravnica Allegiance is so strong. It has pushed almost all of the old decks from last season out, or changed them in very significant ways. That it's more obvious than last times were. Last times didn't feel as, old decks.
Yes, because they all had a bunch of Kaladesh cards in them, Sim. That was what was going on. Kaladesh was so incredibly powerful that you ended up with the decks stayed mostly the same for a very long time. You know, there were different builds, but mostly
the deck went through both seasons, whereas this time we've had
significant changes. Yeah,
between the two seasons there have been big changes, even though there wasn't a rotation.
Yep, precisely. That's kind of my opinion.
That might be where I'm going a bit like not so happy with these. Maybe I also am more aware of the whole of Standard. I've played more different Standard decks because of Arena. I haven't had just one deck. I've played a lot more, and so I'm more aware of exactly what's in the different decks.
Yep.
Because again, the Golgari deck, it's a Findbroker deck. Findbroker disappeared off before the end of last season.
Yeah, like before the end of last season, we'd worked out that actually Findbroker was too slow and clunky. And it's got, you know, Vraska in it rather than Vivian Reed. And basically everyone decided that it was Vivian Reed that you wanted to be playing.
I mean, it is six mana Vraska, so that's good.
That's at least the correct Vraska, yes.
And three, is it? I guess Eldest Reborn's an uncommon, so that doesn't really help to take it out for rare.
No. So yeah, it's I understand where you're coming from. Like, there's definitely the feeling of having missed it by 3 months on these decks, but
and
I think all of them are still very playable, and I think that's what we're going for here. Like, they're very playable, and indeed the blue-red tempo deck,
yes,
that one is a really good starting position.
I agree. I really like the blue-red deck. That looks, but then again, maybe that's the deck that has stayed with us more than anything else.
Exactly, it is, because it's based on a guild that existed in the last set, and mostly didn't pick anything up this set, you know, and it certainly didn't pick anything up outside of its own colours.
And of course, made top 8 in the Mythic Championship, just gone with almost no new cards.
Yeah, amusingly, LSV doing it with what we would have a few, you know, weeks before the Mythic Championship have considered an old version of the list, you know, the Phoenix version of the list, has really helped out Wizards here, because obviously they built these at the start of last season, or towards the start of last season, you know, when we were still playing Golgari Findbroker in our Golgari lists. And we were all still playing Arclight Phoenix in our blue-red lists before we became the 8 Drake list.
Yeah.
And then the fact that we've now shifted back to the Phoenix list away from the Drakes is really helping this look like the closest thing to the Tier 1 standard deck shown here. I mean, the only other one that I'm sort of like, really wish you could have given that one a go, guys, would have been Mono Blue, but Mono Blue's so cheap anyway, that would have felt like a massive cop-out.
Yeah, and also it would be, I mean, Saffron Olive made a post about how much the cards in these decks are currently worth. And in the Izzet deck, the 3 Sulphur Falls are currently worth more than the cost of the deck.
Yep.
And whereas if you'd done Mono Blue would actually be worth less as individual cards than the deck prices. So yeah, I can see they couldn't do Mono Blue.
Yeah, so there's I think they're all perfectly reasonable. You know, if you are teaching someone Magic and they want to come to an FNM with you and they want to play Standard because you haven't been teaching them Draft, whatever, any one of these is a perfectly fine deck to pick
You can
up.
get some wins with any of them in a standard FNM. I would say the white one is possibly very straightforward for how it works, and it's play all your things, hit people.
Yeah. The white one is definitely the deck where I just sort of go, if someone has had literally no other like Magic training, they'll still be able to sneak out some wins with some very powerful, very aggressive cards. They might not always make the right play, but they'll be able to do a little bit more than them necessarily with the other decks.
And if they're a bit better, the Izzet one, because if they get Niv Mizzet down, they're going to win. Yeah,
exactly. So I think in terms of complexity, you've probably got white. Then the red deck is slightly more complex because Experimental Frenzy is a kind of weird card.
Yeah.
And Runaway Steamkin can also be an odd thing to be thinking about. And then next up, it's kind of, I think, a toss-up between the Golgari list and the Izzet list. I think both of them have got a lot of complexity to them, and it's just, trying to make the exact right plays with both of these lists is going to be tricky, to say the least. But if you're looking for value, Arcane Tempo, the blue-red deck, is definitely the one that you want to pick up, because, as you say, 3 Sulphur Falls in the main board here, they'll see play in Modern and will continue to see play in Modern for the rest of times.
Yeah. Both the dual-coloured decks have lands that are worth something there. Although the Green-Black only has 2 Woodland Cemetery. Oh, and an Overgrown.
Yeah, but it gets you the Overgrown too.
And an Overgrown too. Okay. So yeah, three dual-coloured lands. Any other cards that may continue? Arclight Phoenix, obviously, in the Izzet deck, is a modern playable card.
These decks look really good. I'm really happy with how they've turned out. Yes, they feel a little bit old because the newest set is actually quite good, as opposed to last time when, what were we on? Rivals of Ixalan about this time last year?
Yes, and maybe Rivals wasn't that.
Rivals wasn't even as strong as
Ixalan was.
Ixalan was, in my opinion.
Yeah, and
you picked up a few things, but
Kaladesh was dominating, and so they just kept using cards from Kaladesh. That was still what was big in the format. Yeah,
exactly.
I'll take your points on that. I'm hoping they keep doing these every year. They're really great product.
Absolutely. As I say, if you ever teach people Magic, this is so good.
I also think if you want to buy some reasonably cheap decks you can just keep lying around for, I really fancy playing some Standard from 3 years ago, these are the decks you could have.
That's actually really interesting, because I know certain people have floated the idea of playing a proxied version of, Dragons of Tarkir Standard or Khans of Tarkir Standard, because that was such an interesting Standard era. So yeah, if you're like, no, this is really interesting, try keeping hold of them. Yeah, absolutely. Obviously they aren't like dual decks. They aren't balanced against each other, but they are all relatively balanced to each other because they're all the standard mainstays.
Yeah, and they're all basically the same power level wise.
It's just that you're not going to have 50-50 matchups between two decks necessarily, because they aren't meant to be 50-50 against each other. They're meant to be balanced in a field of all of the decks in Standard.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So do remember that if you're intending to treat them like dual decks, it's not necessarily going to work out. Someone's going to end up picking the stronger deck, probably. Right then, as I alluded to a moment ago, we had some results over the weekend. There were actually 3 large Modern tournaments. Realistically, there's only a few things to mention here. The top 8 were very heavily influenced by Izzet Phoenix. We see 8 decks out of the total 24 being Izzet Phoenix, which is, not something to be sniffed out. 2 of the winners, one from the Open and one from Bilbao, were Izzet Phoenix. It's definitely a very powerful deck, and obviously we spoke about it with David Carf a couple of weeks ago. It's strong. It's not ban-worthy. Not yet. Absolutely not yet. We've got it's only been in the format for a little while. The numbers we're seeing for day 2s are very similar to what we saw for humans last year, and Grixis Death Shadow 2 years before that. This isn't ban levels of saturation of the format. The format will adapt. It always does. It might take a little time, but this is not an inherently busted thing like Eldrazi was a few years ago. So the format, I think, can adapt. And then obviously we've got Modern Horizons coming up, and then the possibility of a new mulliganing system, which might change everything as we move forward. So if this is concerning you, if you're not enjoying playing against Izzet Phoenix in Modern, keep your heads down. If you want to try and figure out how to beat it, I'm sure a lot of people would very much be on the plan of, is there any possibility of figuring out how to beat this deck? You can definitely work into that. But if you're not enjoying it, give it a couple of weeks. Give it until at least London. We'll have another Mythic Championship, and if it's all up in the top 8 of Mythic Championship London, there might be some discussions had at WotC headquarters, but until that point, I think everyone's just sort of going, it's the new hotness, no one's really figured out how to beat it yet, it'll have some time in the sun, and then it will do exactly what GDS did, it will do exactly what humans did, and it'll just fall back into the background of the modern scene.
Yeah, as
be another deck.
As sideboards become tuned to beat that deck, they'll lose. Those decks will lose to other things that will end up making top 8s, and Is It Phoenix won't, and it will all get nice and cyclical. It's not more than 2 of any of the top 4s.
Yep. I thought one of them was 4.
Of the top 4s.
Oh, of the top 4, sorry, yes.
So, whereas Eldrazi was pretty much every deck in the top 4 of anything. That's the point where you go, yeah, okay, maybe something needs banning. It definitely does not. Dredge was also really good at Bilbao.
Yes.
So things that are beating graveyards might be stuff that gets into more and more sideboards, which it was going that way. It will just get more and more that way. And I agree with you.
Not something to be too concerned about yet. Put the pitchforks down, folks. It'll be fine. It'll just take a little bit of time because, Modern's a broad format. It just takes a bit of time for... I think there's a lot to be said for deck inertia, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And also...
It just takes time for people to get their stuff together.
It's also So Phoenix has been the hotness for the last month or so. So more and more people are playing it. More good players are playing it. People don't yet have experience of playing against it to go, oh, these are my lines I need to take. This is the point where I need to get rid of the stuff out of the graveyard. Those things also will take time to catch up. In a couple of months, it will be another one of the top decks, but it will not be the top deck.
Yeah. The other thing that should be mentioned is obviously something that's helping the deck is the fact that the deck itself plays one of the best sideboard cards against it in its main board in Surgical Extraction, and that has rather driven the prices up. And so until people get round to finding more hate and being able to get some Surgical Extractions into their deck to stop these fast Phoenix draws, it's going to take a little time. It's just going to take a little bit of time.
Yeah.
But
do I own my Surgical Extractions? That's my next thing to find out.
I really hope I own at least 2, but I could be wrong. Right then, there are no local results that we've got to talk about at the moment.
Sadly, not. No.
Yeah, but obviously, Simeon and I have been playing a lot of arenas, and we've been playing around with a lot of different decks. So we want to continue our discussion of the more fringe decks of the standard format at the moment. So last week we spoke about Selesnya tokens, which I think is still an excellent deck, and we'll talk about that a little bit more at the end. But we also mentioned very briefly the Mardu aggro list, that it's fun, it's fast, it's not very good. I wouldn't recommend playing it. The next one up is actually one that just keeps appearing on my Twitter feed, and I keep fighting on Arena, and that is Gruul in its many slightly varied forms.
Yes. How slightly varied?
I've seen everything from basically the mono red deck splashing a couple of green cards here and there, notably something like Collision Colossus in the main board. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes they'll also have treasure maps, and they'll basically be like a big red deck, but they're also running some green cards, and they've got more green cards in the sideboard. The other version, you can go almost completely the other end of that spectrum, and I've seen decks playing Galter, and they're basically a green stompy deck, but they're running red for the removal spells that green obviously doesn't often have access to. And what I actually really like is there's a lot of really interesting developments going on in that middle ground, where you see a lot of very mid-rangey sorts of cards. Growth Chamber Guardian, Gruul Spellbreaker, Rekindling Phoenix, those kinds of cards.
So where you're talking playing some double green stuff, some green red stuff, and some double red stuff.
Growth Chamber Guardian.
No, I know, but I'm assuming that they also have the 3-drop, or if not, they've got, oh my goodness, card names.
Yeah, come on, you're going to have to give me some proper card names here.
The 2 green 6/6 that you can't play non-creature spells.
Nullhide Ferox. I've seen that only in the Golter versions.
Are they also then running Phoenix?
No, not often.
So essentially it's a green choice or a red choice.
Sort of, it feels like, yeah, you can push yourself into green or red. The people who are splitting it right down the middle are playing the Unclaimed Territory, naming Warrior, because that allows you to play Goblin Chainwhirler, which is a Goblin Warrior, Growth Chamber Guardian, which is a multiple, like Elf Crab Warrior, I want to say.
Sounds right. I'll do a Skyfall check.
Yep, something super weird. Kroll Harpooner, which is a card that I really want to talk about.
A warrior.
Which is an insect warrior, and it's excellent. And then Gruul Spellbreaker, which is an ogre warrior. So you're sort of accidentally running warrior tribal, but you're basically still a red deck because you're playing red for all the removal. You're still playing things like Rekindling Phoenix and that kind of card. And then you could also run Direfleet Daredevil as well if you were interested in that. But obviously not a warrior, so you're going to have to play more red sources for that. But the deck definitely gets away with it. I've played with the deck a fair amount, and you don't often get colour punished. Like, it's not very often where you're sitting there going, wow, I can't cast any of the spells in my hand. Normally you're a little bit hindered in the early game, but you eventually get to play out whatever you want.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of timing in a lot of cases, trying to get your creatures out at the exact right moment. Growth Chamber Guardian has been a 5-drop more often than I would have imagined, because getting that value is so critical a lot of the time, and you really don't want to expose it to a removal spell as you activate the adapt packet, the adapt ability on it. You just play it on turn 5, especially if your opponent's tapped out. You just go, cool, here's a 2/2, it's now a 4/4, I've gone and got another 2/2. That's a reasonable use of 5 mana. It's not bad. But it does also play on turn 2, making it a lot better than a lot of the other creatures that have done similar things recently. And then there's some, interesting debate at the top end. You can be running Skargan Hellkite, you could be running the Siege Gang Commander, that kind of thing. There's a lot of flexibility there.
Skargan Hellkite's the thing I've seen in most deck lists.
Yes, I was actually running the Siege Gang Commander version, and I don't think that was right. I think Skargan Hellkite is really quite amazing, actually. I think that's a very powerful Magic card that isn't seeing as much play as it currently deserves. As
something I would be wary of post-rotation, as possibly a really, really strong card. Phoenix maybe knocks some of its play out, and once Phoenix goes,
absolutely,
it will become much stronger.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with that assessment of the situation. As soon as Phoenix is gone, we'll see a lot more Skargan.
How many red/green warriors, either red or green or both, in Standard would you have said there were?
Red or green or both. I mean, there's going to be a ton of common and uncommon ones, but 12 maybe?
44.
You what? Wow, okay, that's kind of impressive. Okay, so there's some choice there, folks, but again, as I say, Growth Chamber Guardian, Kroll Harpooner, Gruul Spellbreaker, and Chainwhirler are probably the best ones.
But Pelt Collector you haven't mentioned.
Oh, Pelt Collector. I didn't realise that was a warrior. That's interesting.
Thorn Lieutenant.
Oh, wow. Okay. There's a lot more going on here than I initially thought.
Grand Warlord Rada if you wanted to play a somewhat different type of deck. Goblin Cratermaker and Trashmaker are both warriors.
Cratermaker is actually very interesting. I think I saw someone running that in their main deck over the Direfleet Daredevil, and I was very interested in that, actually.
I think they're the main ones that aren't being played that would be interesting other potential warriors
for this green-red list. Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely something to consider.
Spear Spewer is as well, in case that was sort of what you wanted to do instead.
See, this is it, and as we mentioned before, there is definitely a basically red aggro deck that is running some green creatures, so you might want to go more into green than they're currently going, but go more aggro than a lot of these mid-range lists. So Spear Spewer becomes a lot more viable when you can go, Well, literally all of my lands cast it on turn 1, but I get to play this second colour. That seems pretty powerful to me. The other thing that I will... So what I kind of want to dig into here is, like, you've got all these choices, and why would you bother playing it? What makes it...
Yes. Why would you play it? Why would you play it and not play the mono red with a little bit of green in the sideboard?
So the reason mono red currently isn't being played, in my opinion, is, or at least not in as large amounts, is it's just losing out to these white decks. And I think actually it doesn't do amazingly well against blue anymore, mono blue. So there's significant hate in the metagame. We pointed out a couple of weeks ago, that there's just a bunch of incidental life gain stuff going on in the format. Yeah. And so many decks get access to this that the red aggro burn you out plan isn't particularly good. So when you're not actually fixing the problems that have that arise from playing a deck by adding another colour, why on earth would you bother playing it? So I think I'd be leaning way more towards these more mid-rangey green-red lists, and certainly I've had a lot of fun with them. And the reason I think you'd play them at the moment is they're still proactive, they still get on the board early, they still put pressure down on your opponent, and they still, turn creatures sideways and burn your opponent out occasionally. But they've got a slightly later game plan, which gives them a little bit more against the other aggro decks of the format, and means that you aren't basically dead on the spot to a mid-range deck, like a proper mid-range deck like Sultai or something, which, as much as it isn't seeing a massive amount of play anymore, it's still definitely...
Oh, it is.
Is it?
It's still the most common deck I've played against on Arena.
Really?
It really is.
I haven't seen it as much, but I don't particularly think it's very well placed at the moment.
I'd agree with it. It's not being very well placed. But it's definitely deck inertia again.
Yeah.
People playing, this is the deck I've learned, this is the deck I can play. Okay, I'm playing it.
Yeah, absolutely. The reason that I would be very interested in playing a deck like this is, as I say, you can put the pressure on your opponent, you can turn the screws, but you do also have these really interesting like backup game plans. And then there's also the sideboards in these decks. I often love the sideboards because they're, for Cindervines, and I love Cindervines. I think that card is real good. Like, it's not actually very good in a lot of situations, but where it is good, it's amazing.
This is, again, why it's the other card that's in the red decks that's bashing the green. It's Cindervines and the dual card, the
Collision Colossus.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then a lot of them are also running things like Treasure Map, which I think is an excellent sideboard choice, and again should probably be seeing more play outside of the control decks, etc., etc. You also get, access to Fiery Cannonade, which allows you to sort out the go wide stuff. I've actually seen a few decks running Status Statue in the sideboard for the combo of Goblin Chainwhirler Status, and for those of you who don't necessarily know, play Goblin Chainwhirler. It's not fun. It's not fun, is it? It's just not fun. If you play Goblin Chainwhirler, you put its enter the battlefield trigger on the stack, you hold priority, and then you status your Goblin Chainwhirler, giving it +1/+1 and Death Touch. And obviously that gives the damage effect, Death Touch also, killing all of your opponent's creatures.
Yeah, kill everything.
Yes, and this helps give it a little bit more play against those go wide white decks, and against anything else that might be, beating out your regular red removal spells of Lava Coil and Lightning Strike, etc., etc. And then you've still got these, the other removal spells anyway. As I say, the Lightning Strikes. Shivan Fire has actually gone way up in my estimation recently. Mm-hmm. I think it's very well positioned at the moment because everything that you want to be killing on turn 1 or 2, most things I should say, not everything, is an X2. Later on in the game, when you can afford to dump 5 mana into it, then you're killing big creatures, then you're killing real creatures. Yeah. So that's pretty handy. Actually, a deck I'm looking at here has Legion Warboss in the side, and I absolutely love Legion Warboss. I think that is a brilliant Magic card. I wish I had more cores to play Legion Warboss. I really do. And yeah, apart from that, you also just get access to a bunch of really powerful creatures, as we mentioned earlier. Skargan Hellkite, Siege Gang Commander is still pretty good. I don't necessarily think it's the best choice. I would probably play the Hellkite over it, but it's still a very powerful Magic card. Rekindling Phoenix, obviously still a very powerful Magic card. Domri has seen some level of play, but I think there's a good argument for putting it in the sideboard rather than main board, because a lot of your powerful stuff is actually in the spells, and you're playing a lot of spells, which means your -3 is not as useful as it could be.
Yeah, Domri needs to be in a deck where it's -3 is a good choice to make.
Yeah, where 95-ish% of the time you're hitting one creature at least.
So you would go, I'll put Domri on my side so that when I take out my spells,
removal spells against control or something.
Control, Domri is a great thing to bring in. That's fair.
Yeah, that's the kind of thinking I'd be doing at the moment. And then Collision Colossus, again, we mentioned that earlier. I think it's a surprisingly good card at the moment. Good way of dealing with mono blues threats, a good way of dealing with the Crackling Drakes and Niv Mizzets of the format, and also just a way of pushing through damage if you end up not having any targets for it. Another card doing a very similar job, that sort of split threat and removal, is Kroll Harpooner. And I think it's maybe at its best in this style of deck. We play it in Selesnya tokens, don't we, Simeon? And it's not actually great there, because a lot of the time there aren't many other creatures in the graveyard, and so if your opponent plays an X4 and you go, well, the only creatures that have died this game have been tokens, can't actually kill that thing. Bit annoying.
This is true. It's best against blue, which has got the 1/1 flyers from a Selesnya token point of view.
But it is also excellent against mono blue. Kroll Harpooner stops them dead.
Yeah, it is really good against mono blue.
Because obviously, even if they, the counterspells they have to have are more limited, and none of the 1-mana counterspells stop a Kroll Harpooner from entering the battlefield.
I've also found it's good against Esper Control
Really?
post-sideboard.
Because they bring in Thief of Sanity and occasionally Lyra.
Yep, it kills Thief of Sanity straight away.
Yeah.
Always. And by the time Lyra comes down, it can deal with
Lyra
too.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I completely agree with that. And I've been keeping all 4 in against Esper Control. And again, as I say, it's a split card. It's this, I've got nothing else to do on turn 2 and I am the aggressor in this matchup.
Yeah.
Drop Kroll Harpooner, it's still a 3/2.
Exactly. It's still a 3/2, and if I need to block some flyer, it can sit back.
Yeah, exactly. So even if they've managed to not play the Thief of Sanity and I've been forced to play this out, I can still go on the defensive, and they have to have a removal spell for my Kroll Harpooner to get their Thief of Sanity through. That kind of thing is still very, very good. So that'd be, where I'd go at the moment would be 4 Kroll Harpooners in the main board. Just really try and beat out mono blue, because I still think that's one of the best decks in the format.
Yeah, that's a deck I've played quite a fair few times as well. Yeah, definitely. And so against Esper Control, which is the other big deck at the moment, it's pretty decent, even pre-board, just because it's hitting for 3 on turn 3. Yep. So I wouldn't go against 4 of those in the main. And
as I say, I really like the Growth Chamber Guardian. Gives you some nice late game stuff. There are some decks running the Zertar Goblin, which is interesting to me, and it's definitely something where you sort of go, okay, if you're trying to bring your curve down for whatever reason, that's something that I can see. It's another 2-drop that gets to play the same split game as Gruul Spellbreaker against another creature deck. You make it a 4/4, and in the Zertar Goblin's case a 3/3. Against any other deck that's like a control deck or a fog deck or something, you make it what it is on its on the card, and you turn it sideways,
and you hit straight away.
Yeah, and just try and put points of damage on your opponent.
One of Selesnya Tokens' positives is the number of 2-drops it has. You are never not doing something on turn 2.
On turn 2, yeah.
Zertar Goblin strikes me as a similar thing for Gruul, in that you bring that in because it means you have enough 2-drops to be definitely doing something.
Yeah, exactly. If you want to be proactive, Zertar Goblin is not a bad place to start there. I could even see it being played over some number of Direfleet Daredevils, because Direfleet Daredevil is often not a 2-drop.
Yeah, and wants to be... It isn't a 2-drop, is it? Because you can't then play the spell from your opponent. Kind
of the most common place I've played it is turn 4 to take a Thought Erasure and play it on my opponent. And that's been a really common play pattern. Other relatively common play patterns involve, taking an opt, that kind of thing. And then the other one is playing it and getting a jumpstart spell and just exiling it.
Not worrying about
just to get rid of it. Yeah, my opponent they tapped out and played a Chemist's Insight on their turn. Cool. Direfleet Daredevil. I can't actually cast it, but I'll take that and I'll exile it. So because I've just duressed you for 2, basically. I just mind twisted you. Yeah. Him to Torak, that's the word. That was the card I was looking for. So yeah, there's definitely a lot to be said for this deck, and there's some really interesting card choices that you can make, but they all have something in common, and that is they're all relatively proactive and powerful cards all by themselves, but they do get to play this really cool, interesting mid-range game.
Would you go as high as Galter?
I don't think I would. I don't think I've got the bottle to do that.
I feel there are so many sweepers. And yes, you're playing bigger things, but most of them will die to most of the sweepers still. Yeah, even something like your big goblin is only a 2/2.
Yep.
Your siege gang commander in itself. You're sort of asking for, I'm going to have some cards stuck in my hand that I can't do anything with. And then the people that are playing the sweepers are also playing hand disruption. So if you are going to be able to play it, they're going to get rid of it before you can anyway.
Yeah, if they go, I can't sweep this before you can cast this, they're going to take it.
You don't want to go above 5 CMC, do you really?
I don't think so. Although I will say some fun I had out of the sideboard was the Immortal Sun.
Okay.
That was really fun.
Yeah, that I can go to because that's so good against Sultai and making all your creatures bigger with it. Yeah, I can see taking a 6 there.
There's also some of these lists seem to be running like Llanowar Elves and things. Again, I think the deck is at its best when every creature you put on the battlefield is in and of itself a really good threat.
Is going to attack, basically. It's doing Gruul Smash. Yeah,
exactly. It's either a big creature for relatively cheap in the Spellbreaker, or it's Rekindling Phoenix, which is just really hard to deal with. Grove Chamber Guardian, that is card advantage, sort of.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it still can attack and go, okay, I might make myself bigger, or might not.
Yeah, exactly. Threat of activation is fun. And
the things that you can give haste to.
Yes, exactly.
So the Zertar Goblin, the Spellbreaker, and the Dragon can also obviously do that.
Yes, yeah, the Hellkite. The other card that I have sort of seen occasionally is the Worm, the Ravager Worm.
Yeah,
is that
Ravager Worm that eats something when it comes in.
Yes, yeah, and if you've played Arena with it, you'll know that it actually eats them. It's quite cool. So yeah, I really like those kinds of cards. Ravager Worm would definitely be like the highest I would ever go to.
Yeah,
and I'd probably be wanting to play 25 lands at that point, possibly.
Do you have to hit land 6 on turn 6? Probably not.
No, but you really don't want to have it stuck in your hand for 5 or 6 turns. Yeah. Although that being said, if you're casting other spells, I suppose it's not going to be too bad.
And what about Planeswalkers?
So Planeswalkers, obviously, as I say, we get access to Domri.
But we talked about that being in the side.
Probably in the sideboard. Vivian Reed I've seen occasionally, but not very much, actually. I'm not 100% on why, but I haven't seen it very much. Simeon, have you got any? Other than the fact that it's a 5-drop?
I've started playing a 1-of in the sideboard of Celestia Token. I've been playing 1-of in the sideboard. And when it's good, oh my goodness me, it wins the game so often.
Yeah.
And I'm not playing a lot of creatures.
Yeah, I know. I've definitely ticked up and basically missed with that.
Absolutely. Deck. And I'm thinking of going to 2 and taking out an Ajani.
Maybe.
So a card that strong strikes me as in a creature deck. Surely you can find a 1-of
to take out,
and to put a 1-of Vivian in. Yes, it's not something. She's not something you want 4 or even necessarily 3, but 1 or 2 possibly.
Nope. Totally
it would have to probably replace the other 5-drops. That's the issue.
Yeah, and Skogan Hellkite's pretty powerful, and Siege Gang Commander's not bad either.
I think I'd rather her over Siege Gang Commander.
Same, absolutely the same. And then the other one that I have,
I suppose maybe sometimes you might go, actually my opponent's got all of their non-creature removal, their counters. They haven't had anything to play play it on, so they're going to be countering Vivian.
Oh, right, I see what you're saying. Yeah, if they're running negates...
Yes, things like that. It's only Vivian that's going to ask them to play it. Maybe. So, Ian, you were saying?
Maybe, but... and then the last Planeswalker that I've seen sort of occasionally in these lists is Karn.
Oh, I can see Karn.
Yeah, especially with treasure maps out of the sideboard, I can see that being very
Yes,
nice.
I can see a anti-control package in the sideboard of treasure map, Karn, and
Cindervines.
treasure map, Karn, Cindervines, and Domri.
That's a lot of magic cards.
That is, so it sort of depends on how good your main board is against aggro. If you feel your main board is pretty well set up for aggro, you might well be taking 12 cards out against control.
Yeah, that's quite possible.
You can't, unfortunately, because of things like Esper playing the
Thief
Thief
of Sanity
and Lyra, you can't take all of your removal out.
Yeah, it does become a little bit tricky. Sideboarding at the moment is very hard.
Much of your removal doesn't deal with Lyra anyway.
Nope.
What could you have that would deal with Lyra?
Collision Colossus and a big Kroll Harpooner. And Vivian Reed.
So that's assuming they're all in your main deck. You'd be taking out your shocks. Take out 4 shocks. You'll take out 4 lightning strikes. Are you running those 8?
I think so, generally. There's also some toss-up between how much in terms of like Lava Coil you're putting in as well. And actually, I'm kind of interested in Lava Coil in case the control decks bring in the Basilica Bellhorn.
And Lava Coils I'd probably keep in. So I'm looking at a particular deck. It's got 2 shocks and 4 lightning strikes. I could bring in 2 Domri and then one of the others. One of each of the others. Your sideboard's going to have to be thought about quite carefully.
Yes, yeah. That's definitely something that I will say with this list. Know what it is your main deck is good against, and then make sure that your sideboard helps make up for those problems. And I know that sounds super obvious, but at the same time, like your deck can't really do a transformational sideboard, I don't think. So you're going to have to make sure that there's, a certain amount of base covering going on in the sideboard.
How many cards am I bringing out against control? I guess control is the big thing, and then I can only put that number in, and what's my best things to come in.
Yep, yeah, I'll agree with that. Other interesting card that I've seen in actually a fair few sideboards at the moment, a Crushing Canopy.
It deals with the red decks if you happen to run into them with their enchantments. It deals with the blue card drawing enchantment. Oh my goodness, card names today are really bad.
Search for Azcanta or Guild Summit.
The mono blue. Stick it on a creature.
Curious Obsession.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And obviously can also kill like a Tempest Djinn or a Terramander.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
So that is definitely a card that is worth having in for the mono blue matchup, if for nothing else. But it is probably in against other things. Against Selesnya, it deals with a Legion's Landing or with History of Benalia.
Yeah, it can do. I don't think I'd be bringing it in that instance, or a Lyra.
Or a removal spell. It deals with the enchantment removal. It's quite good against white tokens.
I hadn't considered that aspect, but that's a pretty good point.
It has quite a lot of applications.
Split cards will often, or modal cards rather, will often do that. So, yeah.
That's why we're looking forward to seeing lots more over the coming year and a bit of Magic.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like a really strong deck.
Yes, and there's a bunch of things that you can tweak and adjust, especially if you think, you're playing into a certain meta. As I say, I'd be definitely considering the many Kroll Harpooners against Mono Blue, the Cindervines in the sideboard against Control and Fog and things like that. And then against midrange, you just play more Planeswalkers and hope that you can value them out.
Or maybe the one other thing is, how do you deal with your opponent's Planeswalkers?
You mostly don't.
So you mostly hope that you are so in charge of the board that they can't play them.
Yeah, you're mostly hoping that you're on the battlefield enough that you can attack them down.
Yeah, if you're in a smash deck, I guess that is what you're going to be doing most of the time.
Yep, most of the time you're going to be attempting to smash. So yeah, I actually, interestingly, in those sorts of situations, you definitely want to be considering the chain whirler combo, just because that will allow you to get through when your opponent didn't think you could, that kind of thing.
Yes,
they go Planeswalker. I've got it defended with a bunch of different creatures. You'll never be able to take all the loyalty off of it, even with X number of removal spells or whatever. And then you're like chain whirler status, kill all your board, get in on that turn. They haven't left up their removal spell to deal with.
No, because they had all the creatures to deal with it.
Exactly. And from that point on, feels like you're definitely in charge of a game there.
Yeah, I would definitely see that as a play.
Absolutely.
And a one-of lands to make that possible?
I don't think I'd bother with the black land, just so that you could play the the statue half of things.
Okay, you would just leave it. You're playing status, status and nothing else.
Yes. I think that's probably would be my feeling, especially if you're playing Skargan Hellkite as well, because then you've got more ways of dealing those ping, like dishing out that chip damage. If you get to untap with a Skargan Hellkite on turn 6 and you've put a +1/+1 counter on it, you get to go status it. It's now a 6/6, and I'm going to start shooting your creatures.
Yeah.
So that's pretty good. Right then, I think that's kind of all we've got to say on Gruul. Let's talk about some upcoming events, shall we?
Let's do that.
So, we've got on the 24th of March, Sunday, so this coming Sunday, there is a Geeks and Gamers event at Geeks and Gamers in Falkirk, and it's the whole top 8 wins a box, and the winner qualifies for a tournament that they're holding later in the year with £1,000 for first place. So it's a bit of a qualifier for a later invitational, but the top 8 is all walking away with a box, so pretty good in and of itself. This Sunday at Falkirk, the 24th of March.
And then,
if you're interested.
And that's standard, and then the following Sunday there's a modern event of the same type.
Perfect. Seems pretty good. Speaking of modern, we've got on the 25th of May, we've got a modern 1K sort of at Arcane Cards, who are running an event in collaboration with Eclectic Games. They're running a competitive modern event, and it's actually got something like £1,350 to the top 8.
Wow.
Yeah, the first place prize is £500. So
okay.
Yeah,
good event.
Yeah, not a bad prize support there. So check out Arcane Cards for that. It's in the event will be held in Reading at the Patina Hotel, and it's limited to 128 players. So you might want to get booked up for that, because there is a possibility that it sells out.
If I was playing modern, 100%. Talking of which, if I was playing modern, but in fact, if I play anything, that same weekend, the bank holiday weekend, Axion are having a triple event on Saturday the 25th of May. They've got Mega Standard. On Sunday the 26th of May, Legacy event, and then on Monday the 27th, the bank holiday Monday, they have their Mega Modern. So you could go and play Modern at Arcane Cards on the 25th, and then go and play Modern at Axion on the 27th. That sounds like a strong
maybe with
weekend.
Some Legacy on the Sunday.
With some Legacy in the middle. Their Mega Modern has massive prizes. For the win, it will be a trip for 2, including accommodation and VIP entry to the Magic Fest of your choice anywhere in the world. So they've had people go to Las Vegas, to Melbourne, to Toronto, to Hong Kong in the middle of a typhoon. And the rest of the top 8 each get a crate. That is a crate, 6 boxes of War of the Spark.
Absolutely.
And
absolutely brilliant.
On top of that, it's a premium tournament, so it gets Planeswalker multiplier of 4 times. So that it will be during that first season, won't it?
I believe so, yes. Which means that those Planeswalker points will count towards your qualification for the second Mythic Championship qualifier season, which is very handy for those of us trying to get on Mythic Championship.
I worked out how many FNMs I'd have to go to qualify just with points just on FNMs, and even if I went 4-0 at all of them, I would have to play more than there are weeks available in the 2-month window. So we will have to find other events in which to top up Planeswalker points to make sure we stay qualified for those events.
Yep,
and that's even bearing in mind the double multiplier for FNMs. I did take that into account.
Yeah,
but some very, very strong events coming up there over the next couple of months. And if you know of any others, do let us know. We'll get them advertised on the show.
Yes. Simeon, standard. If you had a standard event this weekend, what would you play?
I wish I did have a standard event this weekend. I really do. Because I am loving my Celestia Tokens deck at the moment. Just a very brief overview of how it's doing. I have played 63 matches on Arena with my Celestia Tokens deck since I started noting who I was playing against. I have won exactly 2/3 of them. And I don't get 67% win percentages with decks. I just don't. This is quite remarkable for me. Not only that, it's performances against the top decks that I've been playing against. So against Sultai, I'm 7-2. Okay. Against Mono Blue, I'm 6-2. Against Esper Control, I am 6-2. Those are the top 3 decks I've played against. They're the ones I've played against the most. And I'm at 75% plus with all of them.
Yeah.
Bant or Simic Nexus, 4-2. Drakes, 3-1. Is it Phoenix? 3-0. Esper Midrange, 2-1. And that's all the decks I've played 3 times or more. So every deck I've played at least 3 times, I've won at least 2/3.
That's pretty impressive, actually.
So the decks I'm not so great against are the weird, odd outliers. But against a meta field, I'm loving my chances.
Yep.
And I've backed that up with paper events over the last few weeks, as we know, as we've talked about. Oddly, the only times I've played Gruul, I've lost. I've lost to Gruul aggro and to Jund midrange, which was probably Gruul aggro with status statue.
Yep.
But this deck, it's great against the top end of the meta.
Yep, absolutely. That's definitely what I've been finding as well. I took it from Platinum 4 to Diamond in 2 days. Of winning a reasonable number of matches. It's very good.
This week, I haven't played every day this week. I've played maybe 3 days. I've gone from Gold 3 to Platinum 2.
Nice.
I think I'm seeing more and more lines with it. I think I'm getting better with the deck than I was.
Yep.
And it just keeps rewarding me.
Nice.
So, yeah, I would definitely 100% be on that and recommending that other people switch to it.
Well, you've already convinced me because I've switched to it, and if I was playing something this weekend, I would definitely be playing that. I would definitely be playing Celestia Tokens this weekend, amazingly enough. But yeah, that's pretty good. Right, so if you'd like to have a look at any of the deck lists from the previous events that we've spoken about, do head over to standardintelligence.uk. Maybe pick up a copy of Simeon's Celestia Tokens list. If you want to talk to either of us about the deck, Standard, Magic in general, you can catch us on our Twitters. I am at JackPatton42. Simeon, you are?
I am at SimeonBMTG, and I am very happy to share sideboard plans with people if they do want to play that deck.
If you'd like to talk to us about anything along the form, email standardpattern@gmail.com. We have a YouTube now. I haven't been great at updating it yet, but it will be getting updated this week with all of our stuff and obviously this podcast. It also gets updated with my stream VODs. I didn't stream last week. I was very poorly through most of last week, so I didn't stream. But if you'd like to come and hang out this week, I stream Wednesdays and Thursdays evenings UK time from 7 PM onwards, and then on Sundays I stream from 2 PM till 5 PM, and then often from 7 PM till about 10 PM, and that is over on JackPatton_MTG. We also have a Facebook. You should come check out our Facebook and like our Facebook and do all the Facebook things on the Facebook because it helps. I promise. Also, if you are interested in having a look at our sponsors' websites, you should remember that Axiom now sells a wide range of singles, and you can in fact trade in your cards for cash or get a better return if you're interested in store credit. They also sell sealed product, so if you're interested in drafting, and all of the equipment you could need to play a game of tabletop Magic. over on their website, you can check out a list of their upcoming events across all formats. Obviously, the big ones coming up are the mega weekend events of Standard, Legacy and Modern on the 25th, 26th and 27th of May. But there's a ton of other more regular events going on during the week and that sort of thing, so you can head on over there and check out those events. Obviously, it's Axion. We all know how good their prizes are. It's pretty brilliant what they do, and I really hope that you can go and check out those things. Also, you can find articles and videos by some of the best Magic players in the UK up on their website, axionnow.com. And if you'd like to support the podcast more directly, you can head over to our Patreon over on patreon.com/SIcast. If you are registered by the 2nd of April, you'll be eligible for the April drawing of the giveaway of some Axion Now store credit. So do keep that in mind. As usual, we'd like to thank our patrons very much for allowing us to continue doing this sort of thing.
Thank you,
it's
patrons.
Amazing, and we really do appreciate it greatly. Thank you all very much for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening. Goodbye.